So Catherine Connolly, everybody.
Céadróid rinne mé chuir mé an clog ar siúl. So tá sé ar siúl an seo, agus just I dús spára ba watla má bhuichas a chur anúil de Vanessa agus de Rúri agus an méid ebre atá chur isteach acu agus ag an irden bheogatá agam gur míle mágah agus is iontu a bheith an seo, so tá búla bos tiltte ag an irden. I think it's important to thank the leader of the Green Party, Deputy Sherlock, who's here representing the Labour Party, the leader of Sinn Féin, Mary Lou, Holly Cairns, who has stayed and neglected her baby, which is independent Senator Eileen Flynn, who has finally made a laughingstock out of me. And I welcome that. She's promised that for a long time. And also to Deputy Paul Murphy from People Before Profit. I also see Deputy Brian Stanley and Seamus Seeley, and forgive me, Councillor Declan Bree from Sligo, and Táságam go bhfuil daoine taka ó cean na tíre agus ó cean blá clia chun a bheith an seo le céile. I want to thank you all for coming. I know you've travelled from all over the country and every part of Dublin. And I am overwhelmed, and I'm certainly cringing with the praise. However, I put that aside because there's something far more important happening here, and I'm simply a part of a movement. And I've said that from day one. This is a movement of energy, of vibrancy, and vision to say that we will steer the country in a different way. We will never accept the normalization of genocide. We will never accept 16,000 households. 16,000 households. We don't even know how many people without a home as collateral damage to an appalling and unacceptable neoliberal ideology that has made a philosophy of knowing the value, the price of everything and the value of nothing. A home is the most essential ingredient to give security of tenure, whether that's in a local authority house, whether that's a bought house, a cost rental. It is the most basic ingredient of a society and of a republic. And it is not the collateral damage is not acceptable. A public health system, and I'll come back because I've been asked to talk a little bit about my family, which I'm reluctant to do because I'm extremely private, and so are my sisters and brothers. But perhaps I'll come back to it in a minute as to how it has shaped me. We need an integrated public transport system. We need to call out the existential threat that is climate change, posed by climate change. We need to make language mean something. We declared a climate emergency and a biodiversity emergency almost by accident back in 2019 through pressure and young children outside the Dáil that finally shamed us into declaring a climate emergency. I'd like to tell you that that was proactive government policy. It was not. It was the power of the people on the ground and the power of our children and our young people and people of all ages that forced us to make that declaration. And I welcome that the government did that. but we have not had the transformative action that's absolutely necessary. Transformative action if we are to take serious action in relation to climate change, in relation to what we learned about our absolutely not fit for purpose public health system when the pandemic struck, when COVID struck. We've learned nothing from that either. And we are normalising war as a way of bringing peace. The absurdity of that doesn't need any explanation from me. So I stand here as someone who made a decision with the help of the small team who worked with me and put up with me. And I made that decision, and I was asked to stop using the word tortuous. And they were absolutely right to ask me to stop using that word, but it was a tortuous decision. And it was a tortuous decision for many reasons, because who am I to say I should be President of Ireland? What gives me the right to stand here before you and say I represent you as President of Ireland? So it took me quite a long time to come to terms with that and to realise that people see in me the characteristics that they wish to see in a president. I'm not presumptuous or arrogant to say that I'm the right person. I'm responding to what people see in me. Sometimes I don't see it myself. And I take no credit for those characteristics. I got them from my father and mother and my siblings. There were 14 of us. I'd just take a little water, if you don't mind. I don't mind if you've tasted it.
For your safety.
So I learned about social justice and equality on the floor of my house in Connolly, in a working class area. I learned about being an insider and an outsider from a very early age, when my father kept us all in from a protest that was given out about travellers. And there was a traveller family moving into our area, and people protested. But we also understood that I also understood why the people were protesting, because the hypocrisy of the local authority that sought to do it in a particular way without consultation. And so, although we were inside and not participating, we saw it from both sides. And from a very early age, we learned how to see things from different perspectives, not least of which were the 14 siblings and all of those perspectives, but certainly outside of that. And so when I was asked by Sean O'Rourke, was there politics in my house a few months ago, I foolishly said no, when in fact we were infused with politics in the best sense of the word, social justice and equality. And then I went on, and I make a confession, I was a member of the Legion of Mary. And I have to say I learnt my socialism from the Legion of Mary. I learnt that there was a world outside of me, and outside of my siblings, and outside of our difficulties. There was a big world out there, and we learned how to visit people in hospital who had no visitors, and we learned how to clean houses, and so on. And then I became a member of the Connolly youth group, and again, I never thought that was political, and we collected money to build a basketball court. We just did it. Then we invited the Bishop of Galway and Connolly, and we didn't know what to do at that point. We had all the work done, the money collected, and the basketball court built, but we didn't know what to do next. That's what sticks out in my mind. And then I joined the Order of Malta, which again showed me a perspective outside of myself, as well as learning first aid. We travelled the country for first aid competitions. Of course, it was where we met boyfriends as well and friends, which was very helpful. But we also learned that there was a big world out there. So when I look back on that and I say there were no politics in my house, that's very foolish. It was politics in the best sense of the word. And I'm just spotting various people down here. I didn't realise my niece and nephew were also here. You're very welcome. So I'm sharing that because I've been asked to share it as to what has formed me and what has shaped me, and it is my family. Following on from that, I had the privilege of going to college. I was a late developer. I will tell you that my approach in college was to do as little as possible and still pass exams. But by the time I got to do the LLB, I realised it was a eureka moment for me. You attend lectures and you study and you get the results. It took me quite some time to realise that. But that's what I did, and then I went on to do the BL and became a barrister and so on. There's so many jobs in between, I won't bore you with them. But everything from a cleaner to a nurse's aide to working in a hotel as a chambermaid, along with the other professions that I have shaped me. And I've learned from every single one of them. And what I learned most was every single job is important. And in fact, the jobs of cleaners and nurses' aid are for me, equally as important as the doctor and nurses. They're the people closest to the, they are the people closest to the patients. And any research that I read as a clinical psychologist going back was they were instrumental in the rate of recovery of the patient. So I'm at 10 minutes now, and I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to come back around to President. That's what shaped me. And I have regarded education as a privilege and something that gives me the confidence to say, I actually don't know things. That's what I look on education for. The more you get, the more you realise you don't know. And the confidence to say that, but I will go and check, I will go and read, I will reflect, and I'll come back. And so I have made the decision, tortuous as an all. I know somebody down there is cringing when I repeat it, so forgive me. I have never looked back since I made that decision. And I made that decision not based on party support, although I come back to the parties who made that decision very easy made that decision early for me, and then came in behind me. I made that decision as Lascian Corla to stand, because it is important to stand up and be counted. We never anticipated winning the election as Lascian Corla. In fact, it came as a complete shock to me, I have to tell you, because my ambition and my aim was to stand as somebody who would unite the left, that we would not give a gift on a plate to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and those who joined in with them without a competition. And I made the decision to stand as president in the same manner, based on many, many messages that came to me one way or another. Having made that decision, and the parties came in behind me, I am absolutely delighted, and I want to thank each and every one of you for that. Because what's happening here is not about me. I'm just a symbol. I am a symbol of a movement that says we can do this differently. We will not normalise violence, genocide, housing, 16,000 I've said, and so on. And when we look at that, the theme is a narrative, isn't it? The strong, strong narrative that there's no other way. But we will show them that there is another way. We will show them that peace is not an unacceptable word. Genocide is unacceptable. Violence is unacceptable. Peace is not unacceptable. It is. I'm somebody who's very familiar with the Constitution, in as much as one can be familiar with the Constitution. I have read it as much as I can, and Article 12.8 has already been referred to. And under Article 12.8, the President takes a solemn and public vow to serve the welfare of the people of Ireland. To serve the welfare. And Paul has already mentioned this. A solemn and public vow. That gives a President great flexibility. The Constitution also obliges us to seek peaceful resolution to conflicts. That has become unacceptable. We're now in a world where an economy can thrive based on the military-industrial complex. And countries in Europe are boasting of the military-industrial complex that's given a boost to their economy. To me, economists have utterly failed us, the vast majority of them, in describing a growth economy based on criteria that completely ignore the military-industrial complex role, the role of carers that's never quantified, I don't like the word domestic, violence against men, women and children at a basic level costs the economy 2.5 billion per year. The failure to deal with our mental health problems in a sustainable way and providing services, extrapolating from Northern Ireland, costs something like 12-point-something billion per year. These are issues, these are facts that are never brought in to an analysis of an economy. So as President, I will do my best to reflect the values that we hold dear, the values that I use my voice for peace, that I use my voice to articulate the existential threat posed by climate change, that I will use my voice to reflect the tremendous work of communities on the ground who are under-resourced and not given enough recognition. Communities that have identified the problems they face and also the solutions, but are never resourced enough. I want to say I'm humbled by your attendance here tonight, and I'm humbled by all of those that have joined us online, and I know they've joined us from all over the country. This is a movement. Together we can do this. Together we can shape the narrative and counter the narrative of consensus that has dogged our public discourse for far too long. The narrative of consensus that allowed over 100 years of institutionalisation in Ireland, that locked up women and men in our industrial schools, in our reformatory schools, in our mother and baby homes and Magdalen Laundry. A century and more of incarceration because our republic couldn't allow questions to be put, and those that put questions were demonised and ostracised. I will put the questions, but more importantly, I want to empower and enable you to realise the power that you have. And the power is within this community and within all the communities in Ireland, and you need to use your voice and demand answers. And I'm proud to be part of that movement. I'm also proud that we have united most of the parties on the left, but I would like to think of myself as an inclusive candidate. And sometimes I describe myself as someone there's a right and a wrong, rather than a left and a right, which is, I'm sure they mightn't like. But that's my background. There is a right and a wrong, and genocide is wrong. 16,000 households and rising is wrong, and so on. So we are part of a movement. We're stronger together. Agus Creeknoime in Gaeilge, agus Jerry me gur míle maithagh, is féidir linn é seo a bhaintse ma, is féidir linne a fís eile a chur chun cín, ach obair a slámh céile, agus gan géile don édóchas, tá sé Harbheith tábhachtach, go bhfuil me ginán dóchas a chruthú, agus dóchas a thuirt ar gcuoine óige. So gur míle maithagh agus is onar mór domsa a bheith an seo I bhur gáilúdar.
I think we can go louder. You want to go louder?